Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as we plant some beautiful perennials. So let's go. Have you ever heard that saying? It goes something like, when life hands you lemons, make lemonade. Or when life hands you oranges, make orange juice. Or even, don't cry over spilt milk. There are so many different sayings that are basically telling you the same thing. They're very positive. And when something happens in your life, you can view it as negative or you can turn it around and make it something positive. Well, I have an area right here in my front yard that you see when you come up and down my driveway that I really enjoyed last year. I packed it with a whole bunch of wax begonias that I started from seed. It looked so beautiful last year. I was so happy with it. I told myself I was going to do it again this year. Well, as it is, those begonias, the same begonias that I planted here last year, have not been doing well, which is why I am standing in this flower bed where the begonias should be. I'm going to take you in for a closer look and I want to show you what's going on. Ignore the pretty perennials that you see here and let's focus on the begonias. The begonias are looking fine, some of them. You can see that they're putting on growth and they look really nice. But as we move down the flower bed, some don't look as good, and then there you go. There's a whole area where the begonias have disappeared, they've died, or they just look kind of wimpy. And I had packed this area with these begonias. And as we move this way, we have the begonias again. So what I decided, rather than continuing to look at that and feel sad about it, I said, no, I'm not going to do that. The season has just barely started. We need to make a change. Here is a beautiful Scabiosa. It's a perennial and I bought it probably a few years ago. I had it in my landscape. I didn't like where it was. I dug it back up, put it in my plant nursery. My plant nursery is just a place where I can hold plants for myself as I think about where I want to put them. And it's also a place where I can sell plants to other people. Here's another Scabiosa plant, so I have two to play with in this flower bed. This beautiful Dianthus, I don't have this anywhere else in my yard. I have a color similar to it, but this is a lot more compact. It's one that I winter sowed, and I have three of them that I have to play with in this flower bed. There's the second one. It's not blooming, but that's okay. And there's the third one. And then we have this beautiful silver-leafed yarrow with the yellow flower, and I believe it's called Moonshine. And I bought that on clearance from a big box store a few years ago, and at the time I went ahead and I divided it into a number of pieces. So there are some here that are not blooming. They might not bloom this year, and they might, I'm not sure. But you can see there are quite a few of them. So all of these plants that we're going to be putting in here today are perennials, and they're perennials that were just temporarily in my backyard plant nursery. So I basically went plant shopping in my own yard. And this project is basically free to me, and I know that it's going to make me happy. We've had a very wet, very cool spring. So that's one of the biggest reasons why the begonias just have not been thriving. And that is totally fine. These things happen. So what I want to show you is we can adjust. We can make changes because the season is not over yet. I've placed the perennials where I want them to be, and I'm excited about this because, to be honest with you, I want to move more towards having perennials in my landscape and having annuals like the begonias in containers and pots. So let's get started with this project. To ensure that my Dianthus continues blooming, we might as well go ahead and deadhead it. I'm pointing to blossoms that have already gone by. Those we want to go ahead and deadhead. These are examples of flower buds. I don't want to deadhead those because those will be blooming within another few days. And then these are flowers that I'm enjoying right now. Also, I'm not going to touch these, but in a few days when they start going by, I'll go ahead and deadhead them. To deadhead this blossom right here, you want to follow it all the way down to the end of the stem. And you want to just basically snip it off with your fingers or use pruners to cut it off. Just like this. For this one here, I'm following it down to this leaf node where there's leaves, and then I can go ahead and cut it right there. Let's do this one. Deadheading is important. Not only does it look nice, aesthetically, it just makes your plant tidier and cleaner looking. It also tells your plant not to go to seed and instead to continue blooming for you. This Dianthus was divided last year, which is why I have multiple pieces of it. If you're interested in knowing how to divide dianthus, I'll put a link to it down in the description below. I'm just going to go ahead and pull back some of the mulch that's here. I do have an irrigation line right here, so I just want to be mindful of that. When it comes to these begonias, at the end of this project, I'm going to go ahead and just move them around so they look a little bit more uniform, a little more symmetrical. For a planting depth, I just want to plant my dianthus as deep as it is in the pot. There are so many different kinds of dianthus out there. You'll often see them for sale during the late winter or early spring months. Many people think that dianthus are annuals. Well, there are some annual varieties, there are some perennial varieties, and then there are biennials out there. And what I'll often say is test it out, put it in your landscape, and see how it does. It might be listed as an annual, and you might be surprised. It might come back for you. I always struggled with where to put this particular dianthus, as well as the Scabiosa, just because they're very short. They're not tall at all. And I thought this would be a perfect place because it's right towards the front of this area of this flower bed. And not only that, it's going to be much happier in my landscape versus in that pot. My plan is, just like many of my other plants, I'm going to be dividing this every 1 to 2 years so I can really increase the amount of dianthus in this flower bed. Just look how pretty the Scabiosa is. I don't know the variety of the Scabiosa or the dianthus, but nevertheless, Scabiosa is another wonderful perennial to have in your garden. Scabiosa is another plant that, if I'm very diligent about deadheading it, it will continue blooming for me. And I'll keep you posted in future videos on how long the Scabiosa as well as the dianthus will bloom for me. Typically, when it comes to my dianthus that I have in my yard, it'll bloom in the spring and then it'll throw sporadic blooms for the rest of the season. So I have my irrigation line right here. I'm going to plant right behind it. The irrigation ran last night, so the soil is nice and wet. Otherwise, you would see me adding water into the planting hole because the soil should be wet. You don't want it to be dry. So these right here are the flower buds. The flower buds will eventually open up and they'll bloom. And these are the beautiful flowers. So we're going to keep them as they are. And see those little things at the base of the plant? Those are also flower buds. Once the flowers start to go by, I want to go ahead and follow it all the way down, and I'll be cutting it right there. If I don't do that, the plant will stop blooming for me and it'll tell the plant to go to seed. And I don't want that. I want this to bloom during the whole season. Just squeezing the side of the pot. I want to loosen the roots that are in here. Since these were potted up last year, they're not terribly pot bound or root bound. If they were, I would want to tease the roots a little bit. If I don't do that, that tells the plants to keep going circular inside of here, even though it's in the ground. But this isn't too bad, so I'm going to leave it as is. So I'm just planting it at the same level that it was in the pot, and then I can go ahead and backfill. With the yarrow, I'm just cleaning up the base. It just has a few weeds in it. And I'm just cutting back last year's dead growth at the base. When it comes to perennials, many times you'll find them marked down as soon as they are done blooming. So for example, yarrow blooms a lot of times in the late spring months. As soon as they're done blooming, a lot of times big box stores will mark them down. The same is true for plants like dianthus. So you want to be checking out garden centers or big box stores frequently to see if they're marking down their plants. That's the best time to scoop up your plants, especially these plants that I'm planting right now that bloom during the late spring months. Because when you think about it, garden centers don't want to hold on to those plants. They want to start offering other plants for sale. Again, the roots aren't too bad. I can loosen them up a little bit if I want to. And we want to make sure that we're planting it about this deep right here. And then we can backfill, push down, and backfill. I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of the dianthus, the Scabiosa, as well as the yarrow placed in this flower bed, and then I'll show you what's next. I am loving the pops of pink, purple, and yellow in this area now. We already had the peonies that were giving the pops of pink, but the peonies will be going by soon. We also have a beautiful clematis that's in this area. And that's providing some nice pops of pink color as well. And then we have the perennial fringed bleeding heart. You can see that that also has some nice pops of pink as well as white. One color that I've definitely been lacking during the late spring months is yellow. So I'm very excited to add this yellow in here. And I also am very excited to add these perennials that just have been in their container pots for a few years. I think they are going to take off, and I can't wait to see how this space fills in over the next few years. I originally had the yarrow spaced out more. I didn't like how it looked, so I went ahead and put them in small little groupings like this. So we have a grouping of 3 here, and as we move this way, I have another grouping of 3 over here, and then down towards the end of the bed there is a small grouping of 2 because I ran out. But you know me, over the next few years, I'll be coming in here and dividing these plants and moving them around to really fill in this space. The next thing I want to do is tackle the begonias. And I showed you in a previous video my process for planting the begonias. I'll link it down in the description in case you missed it when we planted this area up. All I'm going to do is I'm going to go in towards the back and I'm going to basically move up those begonias. I want to fill in the front areas more. You can see towards the end of this bed, the begonias look okay, but it's this little section right over here where we're missing some begonias. So I'm just going to move them forward so that we have that color of white. And hopefully they'll take off as the weather starts to warm up here. Truly in life, things happen for a reason. I had these perennials, the yarrow, the scabiosa, and the dianthus that really needed a home. And I struggled with the short perennials, not the yarrow, but the other 2, because I really didn't know where to put them. So this whole issue with the begonias gave me opportunity. Otherwise, I never would have thought to put these plants in this space. Close by to this space is what I call the long border. A few weeks ago, when all my peonies started to bloom, I noticed that there was no yellow in this long border. But I did notice that the yarrow was just starting to bloom in my plant nursery area. So it really is perfect timing to get these planted out in this area. When I originally planted the begonia in here, the peonies were not as big as they are right now. So I'm noticing that some of these begonias were getting hidden anyway. So it's a perfect time for me to go ahead and just move them forward so we can actually see them and enjoy them. I have a couple of small begonia here that are not dead. They're very small, but there is growth here. So I'm going to leave them here for right now. Peekaboo, I see you. Literally, there is a beautiful begonia hiding right under here. I want you to see, literally, these begonias are not growing. I mean, this one looks nice, but look at the roots. They really need to take off. Even though we have these couple of small begonias here, I'm still going to plant one right here because I want that pop of color right away. Why not? I'm looking under here. I have another begonia tucked right here that you really just don't see. So out it goes. We'll just pop it right here. I am loving how this is looking. This makes me so happy. And you can see we just pulled forward those begonias and it just fills in the gaps that we're missing. I have some more plants in my plant nursery. I want to take a few of them, and there's this one little area right back in there where I think we can add some color, because you can imagine eventually the peonies are going to go by. So let's go shopping in the plant nursery. This is where I've been getting all these plants from, so let's just keep on shopping. So if you're new to my channel, this is on my property. It's just what I call my plant nursery. And it's where I sell a lot of plants, but it's also a holding area for plants that I divide from my landscape, and I don't know where I want to put them. There's some really beautiful things in here that are blooming. The white colored flower is a dianthus that I winter sowed a few years ago. And these pink colored flowers, these are Sweet William, which is a type of dianthus, but they are biennial. So I winter sowed these as well, and they were just seeds that I collected. So let's go ahead and grab some of these and we're going to plunk them in. I figure the peonies will go by and I'll have to cut back their blooms. So it'll be pretty quiet towards the back here when it comes to color. We'll still have the green foliage of the peonies, but there won't be any color towards the back. So we might as well put the Sweet Williams here. Sweet Williams are a biennial. So when they go by, I want them to go to seed. And it would be nice to see, I might love it, I might not, time will tell, how it looks to have Sweet William towards the back of this bed permanently. Put that in like that. You can see it's giving a little bit of height there towards the back of the bed. These couple of pieces at the base here, they're not going to bloom for me this year. So the hope is next year they should bloom. But we have a beautiful bloom here and I want to show you. It's quite leggy, so when I plant it, I need to make sure that this part here is under soil. I don't want it to be so leggy. So I'm doing the best I can with finagling things around. Like I said, this plant became very leggy and I want to make sure that the blooms for next year are still above soil level. But this part that's kind of leggy is beneath soil level because it's kind of an eyesore. So we're just going to do the best we can to backfill around that. There, that looks much better. So again, I have these pieces that I want to photosynthesize. They should be feeding the roots. So next year, these should bloom. And in the meanwhile, we'll enjoy the blooms on this one. As soon as I see that it's starting to go by, again, I need to deadhead it. I need to come in and start cutting it back, not all the way to the base, just down to the next set of leaves. And it should put out new blooms for me during the whole season. I'm going to continue popping in a few more of the Sweet William towards the back of this area. When I'm all done, I'll show you what's next. Look at all the pops of color happening in this bed. I am so happy. I was feeling a little down this morning. I was feeling a little sad about this area. When you spend all this time babying plants that you grew from seed and you see that they just are not thriving, it can be upsetting. But then you just have to turn your day around. Do whatever it takes just to make that space jump out at you again and to make us happy. I think that's what gardening is all about. And you don't have to do it with breaking the bank. You could go to the clearance rack at a store, at a big box store or any local garden center, and just take a plant that's maybe not doing so well, but you can bring it back to life. I went to Lowe's the other day and they had a whole bunch of annuals that definitely were fine. They just needed a little bit of fertilizer and deadheading. There are a lot of different ways you can basically take a space and get it to pop with color again. And I'm so happy that we tackled this together because this makes me happy. I really hope this video gave you some sort of idea, some sort of inspiration for your own garden space. Maybe it's a container pot that's not doing well in your yard. Maybe it's your vegetable garden, or it's a small space in your flower garden. Whatever it is, you definitely have time. You definitely can make an impact or a change just by shopping your own yard. Maybe you don't have a plant nursery, but perhaps you have some plants that you started from seed that still need a home and can be tucked into that space that really needs it. Or maybe you have perennials in your yard that are blooming right now, and you can take some of them and move them into another space in your yard just to get that pop of color. That's the way I think about it when I look at a space that's lacking in color. What can I do to make it more colorful? I like to walk around my yard and shop my own yard, be it annuals or perennials. And if I don't have that option, then I can go to a local garden center and look in their clearance section. Maybe there's something there that just needs a little bit of care that I can just deadhead, fertilize, and plunk into a space. I'll definitely keep you posted on this space when I do future garden tours. I can't wait to show you how it fills in. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.